Chapter 31. The start of a new life. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Oh, it looks like Randall was lucky this time and pointed you in the right direction before those filthy slavers got to you. I was a bit unsettled at the thought that slavers were active in this town. I knew that in this world there would be slaves and such, but just never crossed my mind that I would be in a city that was a hotspot for them. I look up at her with an inquisitive stare. You're telling me there are slavers in this city? What exactly is the ratio of enslaved versus the ones who made it here? I couldn't help but asking her. She looked down for a little bit and next a small sniffle comes from her as she raises her head with teary eyes. Unfortunately, you are the only one who has made it this far. The others usually get enslaved almost as soon as they enter the city. It seems like any demi-human or intelligent monster draws their attention. We have rescued a few of them before, but the state they were in when we rescued them were so awful to the point that they just could not survive once freed. At this point she started to weep and cry. Thankfully there was a chair located nearby as her legs started to buckle. I rushed over and helped her to the chair and looked around while she continued to cry. The inside of the house was definitely built to house anything other than humans. The flooring was a sturdy stone in some parts, while in others there were patches of lush greenery with sweet-smelling flowers. The whole first floor was open with only a small desk in front of the entrance as you walk in. The upstairs, I assume, was made for more lightweight beings, as I could see above me was a wooden ceiling. After a few minutes she eventually stopped crying, and after wiping away the tears she spoke up in a cracked voice. "Pardon me, I'm so sorry. It's just that the thought of what those poor creatures had to endure only to end up being so reliant on those torturers sickens me, and it's just too overwhelming." She squeaked out the end of her sentence as she started crying again. Good Lord, this lady is too damn emotional. Granted I didn't see what she saw, but still. Oh well, it looks like this is as good a hiding place from that crazy werewolf bastard and his necromantic master as any, I guess. I used the few minutes that she was crying to look outside the windows to hopefully get a general idea of where I am, but unfortunately it looks like this house was based at a center point with an alleyway-like dirt road leading in the four directions towards each of the gates, and surrounding each of those roads was houses and small offshoots in between. I can see how a city like this would be perfect for slavers to work kidnapping with how the city layout is. Ma'am, I'm sorry, I don't mean to be a bother. I didn't mean to dredge up all those awful memories. I myself am on the run from two very powerful people and need a place to hide. Can you help me, Ednell.co? She looks up with tears still rolling down her cheeks, but a questioning look was now the only thing in her stare. Who exactly are you running from, Dragon? She gets up and steps closer to me, and with each step a sense of dread and heaviness start to wash over me, almost forcing me down to the ground. Tell me now, Dragon, who are you running from? As she steps one last time to stand over me, her eyes change into slits and her body morphs into that of a huge lamia. Her upper body being the form of a beautiful woman, but her lower body changed into a coiling snake body with a rattle tip at the end. She came closer to my face and stared directly into my eyes. I could feel my mind begin to get hazy as a notification popped up. User is being targeted by a lamia charm. Does user wish to block? With my mind in a haze, I could barely comprehend the words the longer her eyes bore into mine with such an intense hypnotic power. Using the last of my willpower I whispered, yes, and the next instant my mind clarified and I could think rationally again. The lamia shook her head in frustration and shock. How did you break free from my charm? No mortal man has ever resisted me before. Who are you and what power do you have to resist me? She was backing away slowly to a safe distance, but just close enough to strike if the need arose. I smirked as first I saw a pop up. User has gained charm resistance. It appears that I gained a new skill thanks to you. Now I am running away from the necromancer and the master Lucan. They kidnapped me and 3 of my friends to train as fighters against shadow eaters. This might not sound bad at first, but Lucan showed his true colors and after a slight provocation from me decided to try and kill me, so after a short fight in which I got my ass handed to me in just a few short hits I ran away, and found this town. She only looked at me in disbelief as I told her the basics of my life story up until the current moment. During which she turned back into her human form, and after a few moments of silence rushed at me and embraced me in a motherly hug. The hell is this? First she charms me, now she's hugging me. This woman is a hurricane of emotions. Little dragon, I am so sorry for everything you went through up until now, but I promise that I will do my best and help you to survive in this city. But in exchange you have to help me find and protect others like yourself, deal? I was a bit confused by all that just happened, but thinking on it for a few seconds I figured that, what the hell, she doesn't seem that bad besides the emotional roller coaster I just went on. So I shook her hand and agreed. Afterwards she helped set me up a small area in the front corner of the house on the flowery garden area. I was hoping she would give me a spot over there just because the smell was so lovely. I wanted to wake up to it every day. Next she got me some warm food, which was some form of bird in a huge bowl of some kind of fruit juice. The taste alone of the bird was close to chicken and I was in heaven while eating it. It was juicy and moist, the portions were huge, and after I finished one plate she would bring me another. Next, when I drank the juice, it was sweet and citrusy, almost like a pineapple mixed with an orange, but had a slight sour ending that kinda tied it all together into an amazing drink that would make any person pucker. After eating she suggested I get some sleep and we would talk about what my duties would be tomorrow. So I went over to bed and almost didn't make it with how tired I was getting. I was a little surprised by how quick I was getting tired, but I just chalked it up to how much I had eaten. But I got to my new bed and laid down and was soon falling asleep. But right before my consciousness faded away a warning message popped up. Warning, 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 user has ingested a powerful fast-acting sleeping agent, Rikame. You are Rue. I woke up with a huge headache and to the sounds of multiple people yelling nearby. I told you to be easy with the merchandise, Hilda. You always go overboard with the sleeping agents and end up feeding the products too much. We need them awake in order to fully showcase them to the buyers. It's not my fault that you sent me a damn dragon. How was I supposed to know how much was enough to knock him out? But the thing is, he resisted my charm shortly after coming under my spell. But even then, what if he wasn't lying about being on the run from the necromancer and one of the masters? Do we really want to risk it this time? The stakes could be a lot higher than we want to risk. Baby doll, listen to me. This dragon alone can pay our way to the next island. There we can wash our hands of this whole slaver business and become rulers ourselves. I hear laughter shortly after, so I slowly open my eyes to see slit snake eyes looking at me. Good morning, dragon. I didn't suspect you to be awake so soon after eating so much of my potent sleeping agent. By the way, as a lamia, I can sense heat like a regular snake, and when a person wakes up, the increase of their heartbeat in turn increases their body temperature. But hey, good try acting asleep. If it was anybody else it might have worked. The lamia lifted me up, and behind her I was able to see that it was the guard who directed me to the house. Then a new voice was heard from behind them. It looks like this dragon is a bit unique. Maybe when the auction starts we raise the opening bid to, oh I don't know, let's say 20,000. How does that sound, little dragon? A man walks out of the shadows and into the room that was lit up with lanterns with some kind of reflective surface that was focusing the light in towards me. Almost like an interrogation light from the detective shows I watched. Look, I don't know what's going on here, but please, this doesn't have to be like this. I can work, man, just don't sell me off to some buyer that has who knows what planned for me. I begged them as they lifted me off the floor by chains that were wrapped around both sets of my legs and even wrapped around my neck, then attached to some pulley on the ceiling. They look at each other before laughing loudly. Then the guard walked towards me and threw a hard kick right into my ribs. Ha ha ha, listen here, we are the ones in charge and you are a hot ticket item right now. Once our buyers heard we had an actual dragon up for sale, they went berserk and sent in multiple offers trying to get you before you went up for auction. So be a good little boy and act right so that we can make millions off of you tonight. Ha 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 ha. Hilda, put this boy back to sleep. We can just juice him up a little bit before the auction to wake him up. The next thing I see is the lamia's face stretch horrendously and two fangs about as long as my foot popped out from the roof of her mouth and she sunk them into my back. I could feel a pulse from her teeth as a liquid spread throughout my body and my consciousness left my body. I'm sorry, but you are worth too much and I cannot keep living this life. I want to be free and have a family away from all this torment. Please forgive me. Was the last words I heard before the world faded away. Charm resistance, 0%. User is able to resist any charm effects. Chapter 32. The Escape. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I woke up to the sounds of chains dragging and the feeling of my body being pulled. I look around and see that I am in an area filled with cages, each one having a different monster or a humanoid-looking figure held within. I was hoping that the past day was just a dream, but after seeing this my heart dropped. Soon after I see a message pop up. User is blocked from accessing skills, object identified, object classified as dampening collar, removed to access skills. Seeing this I start to feel the collar on my neck. It felt heavy, and testing it out I tried to activate my electric scales only for an extreme shock to go through my entire body, causing me to scream out in pain. Nav the main product for the night has awoken, and to boot you just saved me the time to warn you against trying to use your abilities, hahaha. Now just be a good monster and wait to be sold off. We wouldn't want to have to reduce your price because of having too many wounds now, would we? The person dragging me said as they open up a cage door and then throw me in. The chains unlatched from around me and slithered off to wrap around the man. It seems the chains were actually his skill or magical item, that I wouldn't know for sure. But looking around I could see others occasionally going through intense pain as I saw electric currents emit from the collar. Hey, why are you still trying to use your abilities? It's pointless, you just end up getting shocked, right? I ask a demi-human girl next to me that had bright green feathery wings for arms and 2 talons at the wingtips. Her feet were also 3 front talons with a large dewclaw coming from the back. I am a proud harpy and this will not stop me from escaping and going back to my home. After she said that, another arc hit her body, but this time I could see her feathers start to faintly glow before dimming again. Hold on, I just saw your wings glow. Are you able to use your abilities? I was shocked seeing this, but also I was hopeful at the idea that if I could just persevere I could eventually escape Oswell. The harpy ignored me and just kept focused on her own things, so I took that as a sign to stop bugging her and instead start focusing on my own escape. So I start off by trying to use mana absorption, which led to the shock happening, but this time the pain was less intense as I got a pop-up. User has been subjected to intense electrical currents. User's skill lighting resistance has increased. 0%. 15%. User will now be able to handle the power emitted from the collar. Sweetness, this will come in handy, but wait, didn't the system say it was classified as a dampening collar? Then why is it only just shocking me whenever I try and use my skill? That question was shortly answered as I completed a successful use of mana absorption, and after a few minutes my MP had only refilled by 1 instead of normally refilling. So that's what it meant by dampening. It doesn't just shock me, but it also lowers how effective my skills are as well. It looks like whoever runs this operation has either gotten lucky with this collar or had this particular thought in mind while making it. Still being hopeful about the situation, I continue to resist the shocks. Even though I didn't get another notification about my resistance increasing, I was still able to feel the power decreasing with each shock. After a few hours I start to hear loud noises from up above. It sounded like clapping and excited yelling as a man clearly speaks. Ladies and gentlemen, I humbly greet and welcome you to the Forbidden Crows auction house. We have for this evening's items a special prize. We recently acquired a dragon, but this is no mere dragon. It has been appraised by our in-house beastmaster as a variant dragon with specialties lying in the smoke and space magics. This of course leads us to increasing the opening bid, but before the main event let us bring out some appetizers to loosen up those coin purses. During that speech a man had come and drug away a large rabbit-like beast that just waiting. It didn't fight or anything. I got a look into its eyes as it passed by me and all I saw was a deadness that scared me. It had no fight left and just gave up on life. Using that as motivation, I waited until they left and the man above started the bidding for the beast. I continued trying to break free, every now and then looking over at the harpy and seeing with each shock her wings would grow brighter and brighter, and then I started to feel a slight breeze pick up, but it would only pick up to a point of ruffling her feathers before dying down, and she would get shocked and have to start over. I changed from using absorption to instead activating my scales. Using that, I stopped feeling the shocks and instead was slowly drawing in the power of the electricity into my scales, which in turn gave me more power until finally, after a quick outburst, I was able to break the collar into pieces. With a loud bang, I broke through the bars and was about to run away before a voice from behind stopped me. "Please help me, you are powerful, please." It was the harpy. I could see by looking in her eyes that she was slowly losing the motivation to keep going and that this was her last resort, as a small flicker of hope was dimming. Shortly after, I started hearing more pleas for help from the surrounding cages as demi-humans of different types woke up from their stupor and with a renewed hope pleaded to be rescued. Knowing that there was a short time until the next beast would be auctioned off, I quickly went around and started breaking the bars on the cage, which surprisingly on some of them were only just wooden poles fastened together. But starting with the harpy, I just broke them free from the cages and didn't waste time with the collars. I had successfully gotten 20 different creatures freed before I heard a door slamming open and I heard the footprints of at least a few different people running and screaming towards us. "Stop right there, boys, stop the merchandise from escaping!" shouted a man that was fairly well built with a large upper body and thick legs that was carrying a large axe across his back. There were 2 other men with him who I assumed were the boys that he mentioned, but they were just your typical goon types. So I just did what I always do and used a smoke breath that filled up the room while me and the 20 others ran out of a side door behind us. User has killed their first human. Now generating reward. User has gained the skill Man Killer. I was happy I got a new skill, but now was not the time to really look into, because after exiting through the door we found ourselves in a large underground tunnel with multiple offshoot paths leading to who knows where. One of the escapees speaks up after we stop running to catch our breath. It was a small mole-like beast. "If you want, I can scout ahead, and with my abilities I can sense which path leads to the surface. I would just need you to get this collar off of me." Seeing no other alternative, I send a quick shock back through the collar and it disintegrates. "Okay, now that the collar's off, go searching through the next tunnel, go as quick as you can. We don't know if those goons back there were the only ones." I hope my smoke stopped them, but judging by the aura the big one had, I highly doubt that. "Now go." The mole quickly digs through dirt going down one tunnel while I look at the others to see if there are any that could provide help. Oswell, are there any here who can use illusion magic or perhaps control earth or help with healing or scouting? I ask while looking and see a few hands raise up. One was a short and pudgy rat-like beast man. "I can help scout ahead. I have a skill that senses danger approaching and I am also skilled in sneaking should the need arise." "Good, okay, let's send you down the opposite path," the mole went, "but first come here and let me take care of the collar, but before you go I need you to wait here, I have a plan." He nodded and stood behind me. Next after that was a slender fox beast woman who came up to me. "I can use illusion magic, what we're thinking." Looking at her I could see that she had a desperate look in her eyes, but brushing that aside I took a second before responding. "I plan on creating a tunnel using the mole as a scout ahead, but we need to cover up the entrance. Think you can do it? If not, it's fine, we can just cover the hole back up after we all go through the entrance. I figured that way we can lose the humans while also escaping to freedom without the need to always watch our back and reduce the amount of stress on the others." She looks around and after thinking for a few seconds she nods. "I can do that, but it would be better to go ahead and cover up the entrance after making the tunnel. My illusion magic is just that illusion. If they so much as touch the fake wall it will disappear and reveal the tunnel behind it." I knew that this was probably the case, so after putting her to the side, after talking a bit more, I turned towards the others and find a large demi-human with that looked like an armadillo that stood on 2 legs. "Hey, my name is Sundar. I am a armadillo demi-human who specializes in earth magic. I can do what you're talking about if you'll free me from this bullshit of a collar." After a few more minutes of speaking with the others, I find out that at least 4 of them, including Sundar, can use earth magic and volunteer to create the tunnel. I also found out the harpy's name is Sylvania and is from a mountainous region to the far south. There was a brown-furred bunny, another mole that until now was very shy, but after a few minutes of convincing by another blue-colored mole, it finally spoke up and volunteered for the tunnel duty. There was a brown-scaled snake that specialized in mud and sand like magic, so I had it help out with the tunnel entrance and lay down a few traps near the door leading to the cages. Other than that, there were a variety of different humanoids ranging from lamias to lupins to beastmen, and then intelligent monsters ranging from the moles and bunnies to larger creatures like snakes and even a green salamander. After an hour or so of conversing with the others and solidifying the plan, the mole came back to report. I found an exit, but it's guarded by a squad of humans that are looking around. I guess the news of our escape already is widespread, so we have to be careful. Hearing that, I changed around a few of the details but overall kept the same plan, and I informed the mole of the plan as well. Thankfully he agreed and even was eager to get started. After making sure everyone's collar was removed and they were in top form, we started the escape. Man Killer, LVL 00 out of 10. User gains increased damage to humans. Chapter 33. The tunnel. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I had the Earth users start the process of digging out the new tunnel. After a quick suggestion from the fox lady, who I learned was named Kitsoma, I had the snake turn the wall into mud and then control to create a wall in front of the slaver's door. I wouldn't have thought of that if she wasn't here, so I decided internally to try and keep her around as a companion if I could. The fact she is a smoking hot fox lady has nothing to do with it. After a little bit we had a decently sized tunnel dug out, but by this time the rat man named Howie started to hear a soft banging coming from the other side of the mud wall turned stone. Which was further elaborated on by the snake, who said that he felt at least 4 separate things banging on the wall. With that being said, we all decided to hasten the tunneling, and after a large enough hole was made, I called it good for now and had the others hurry and crowd into the hole while the snake created a wall behind us. After a few minutes we hear a loud bang and muffled voices. I have Howie go up and try to get a better sense of what was being said, because I knew it was the big guy from before and a few other goons. But I wanted more info to decide whether we should hurry and dig as fast as possible with no regards to safety, or we have time to take it slow. There is a tough-sounding voice saying how pissed he is that the dragon killed his friend. He also is going to torture you and then skin you to make a cloak in his honor. The other 3 voices are either agreeing or offering words of encouragement. I'm gonna guess these guys are just lackeys and the big one's the boss. It looks like they have no idea about us digging a new tunnel. They just thought that the wall was made to give us more time to run away down a random tunnel. With that, I have Kitsoma give us some light after finding out she can also use fire magic. Great work, Howie. Now listen everyone, we have some leeway time-wise, so let's use this to quickly but quietly keep digging. I want 2 teams of the Earth users, that way you guys can take shifts. Now I know I didn't have time to say this before, but my name is Vexus. Yes, I am a variant dragon, but by no means does that automatically make me powerful. I was born a runt. I have earned what little power I have. All I ask is that we remain as quiet and calm as possible until we reach outside. At this time the mole came up to me. Nice to meet you, just call me Digger, but hey, besides that, listen, when I was scouting around I sensed a huge opening near us that could be a good resting spot. It felt like it opened up, but if we dig towards it we could potentially have an unknown cave that exits out somewhere away from the humans. Vexus, I don't think that is such a good idea. I turned to look at Kitsoma. And why would that be? If it's as Digger says, then we could save valuable manpower and instead take our time with a base of operations to search from. She nodded but still kept a firm look in her eyes. That may be, but we are so close to an underground slavers auction site. Don't you think that the slavers would have already known about this? Humans may be horrible creatures, but they are incredibly intelligent as well. They would have already scouted out the earth around the site to avoid potential dangers. And that did make sense to me, thinking that if I was a leader of an illegal trade I would want as little interference as possible. I smiled after giving it some thought. You are right, that is why we will dig into the cave. I said with a confident smile. I heard audible gasps and a few quieted voices asking why and others saying that it was suicide while others yet were questioning if I was in my right mind. The harpy spoke up after this. Quiet down you idiots and let him finish, he is more cunning than suicidal moron. I thanked her with a quick nod before speaking again. Listen, we know they are looking for us solely because we are a big lump of money to them. They would go out of their way to capture us again as long as they could still make money off of our suffering. We just need to lead them on a wild goose chase which the cave would be perfect for, and we can even leave the entrance we dig open to think that we abandoned the new tunnel altogether while in reality we just sealed it up again like we did at the start. After a while of processing what I was telling them, I started to hear a chuckle from my right. It was the armadillo demi-human Sundar. Ha ha ha, for a second I thought you were crazy, but after hearing the rest of the plan I think we should do it. It would be a good chance for some of us to decide whether to stick around or take their chances in escaping through the cave. I have noticed a few of you in the crowd that are starting to get a negative outlook on Vexus even after he got rid of your collars and came up with this whole plan. That's why I've decided to help him by weeding out the bad apples, so to speak. Taking a look around the group, I could see a few faces that indeed started staring at me and were sending off some negative vibes. I didn't care why they were like that, but what Sundar said was a great idea. I didn't need people who would be a potential traitor down the road. I needed companions, followers, who would listen to me and help me grow stronger. That was the end goal, and I found a few candidates right here. Okay, let's do it then, Earth users, if you please, let's hurry up and get to the cave. Digger, please guide them quickly so we can discard these bad apples, as Sundar has called them, as soon as possible. The group starts to get a little agitated, but I quickly speak up again. Okay, as of now I can sense some hostility, but let me just say this: if you feel slighted in any way, then please just hold off till we get to the cave. From what Digger said, it's a fairly large cave, so if any of you want to, you're more than welcome to try and kill me there, or you can take the easy way and leave the group from there. I will not, however, allow you to continue in my escape plan from then on. Miss Kitsoma and Mr. Sundar, I will rely on you to help me keep an eye on some of the more unruly elements until then. The two of them nod, and after another hour of tension-filled tunneling we finally exit into the cave, which after a short look around was actually bigger than what Digger said. It was a cave that was used as a storage for the humans, but it appeared to be abandoned. See, I told you, Vexus, this cave is already well known by the humans. Yes, I know, and I trusted your word, but I don't plan on going any further than this room. If you can find some flammable materials and set up some torches, I have a feeling that I am about to be busy. I say the last part as I spot a group of 5 demi-humans start approaching me from the back of the group. A stout-looking orc approached me and even seemed to tower over me when he got closer. Okay, we are here, so let's fight. I don't think you're strong enough to lead anybody, like you said you were a runt. I think I am the best choice for leading us to safety. Fair enough, but first, what's your name? I ask, not really caring but only stalling for time to analyze his body better. My name isn't important to a dead beast such as yourself. He snorts as he replies. I only shake my head and start to walk towards one side of the room before turning around and nodding towards him to do the same to the other side. Okay group, this is the rules. I will fight you one-on-one. Should anybody intervene, the match will be forfeit, and so will the lives of the perpetrators. Got it. That's the only rule, so after Kitsoma says go, we will fight. I say towards the crowd, and with Kitsoma in the center between us, she looks at us both before shooting me a worried look. I shake my head towards the side, giving her the signal to move back. Fight. The orc rushes at me with a plank of wood he found laying on the ground. What a sneaky bastard, he found a weapon, haha, good. I smile seeing this, and after he reaches about halfway I shoot a small stream of concentrated smoke into his face. Cough, cough, you cheating bastard, face me with honor. Cough, cough, I start to circle the idiot orc. You moron, you said you wanted to kill me, what makes you think I will face you head on? I know orcs are known for their strength, so I'm going to do my best to stay far away from arm's reach. Dumbass, I shout as I send 2 shadow strikes from behind, hitting his broad back with one and the back of his left knee with the other, making him kneel. He growls with anger and I see a faint reddish glow cover his otherwise brownish skin, and he rockets off the ground in my direction. I was shocked at the speed and was unable to dodge in time as his huge body slams into mine and sends me flying to crash into the wall. The wall behind me was slightly cracked at the impact and I choked up blood but quickly got up and ran towards the still blinded orc. Not wanting to fool around anymore, I activated my buff skill and using mana manipulation I covered myself in a large layer of mana before slamming into the orc. User has created skill. Mana Body Slam. User has gained 2 intelligence points from creating new skill by using a maxed out skill related to mana. Pushing the new pop-ups to the side, I follow the now flying body and as it impacts the wall with a greater impact than when it happened to me. I use lightning muscles and concentrate the power in my arms, and then I use shadow strike again, but this time when I slash the electricity wrapped around my claws and upon impact with the orc it shot out and into the orc's body, sending it into mass convulsions as it was being electrocuted. User has created skill. Lightning Slash. Foam had started to come from its mouth as steam was slowly escaping from its ears as its insides were being cooked. I had essentially created a makeshift orc microwave, and let me tell you, my mouth was watering as it had been a good minute since I ate. User has entered a state of hunger. Suggested action. Eat. No shit system, never would have guessed that eating would solve this problem. What's next? Maybe sleeping would cure how tired I get at night. User is recommended to refrain from using sarcasm towards system. The hell is the system sentient? Before I delve down that rabbit hole, the smell of freshly cooked orc wraps my mind up, and before I knew it I was digging in and started devouring the corpse right in front of the others without a care in the world. Smoke Stream, 3. 4. Shadow Strike, 6. 8. Electric Scales of Vitality, 4. 5. Mana Body Slam, LVL 00 out of 10. Using mana manipulation to cover the body, the user then charges and slams into opponent. Intelligence 1. 3. Lightning Muscles, 1. 2. Lightning Slash, LVL 00/10. By coating claws in electricity, the user can slash forward and electrocute enemies, causing paralysis. Chapter 34. The Discovery and a Mishap. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The outside world faded around me as I was captured by the sweet taste of meat. I knew that it had only been a day since I ate, maybe a little longer, but the smell of this pathetic orc roasting was enough to send my hunger into overdrive. I ate everything until there was nothing left, and after the world came back into view I noticed that the crowd behind me had stood there with mouths agape and in mixed expressions of shock or horror. I looked around and could see blood splatters and other viscera scattered around me as I assumed yet again I had lost self-control and became a mindless eating machine. Wow, so I can totally explain this if you'll just relax and listen. I say as I finish wiping off the blood from around my mouth, which seemed like the starting action to finally bring them back from their shocked trances. They started screaming and several of them started running away into the cave. The few who stayed were thankfully the ones who I formed a quick bond with. The fox woman, the mole, the rat man, the armadillo demi-human, and the harpy. I smiled happily as I walked over to them. Thank you for staying, guys. I know this came as a shock, but I can explain. They looked at each other nervously at first, but shortly with eyes that shone resolution they looked back at me and nodded as a group. Sylvania was the first to speak. We knew you were different, and I am sure each of us has our own secrets to keep, but we started our escape thanks to you. I personally cannot leave a debt unpaid. The others followed suit and said roughly the same thing. I went into the explanation. Thank you guys so much. It may have only been a short time since we met, but a traumatic event like almost being sold off like merchandise by slavers is definitely a bonding moment in my book. But back to the reason that I devoured that dumb orc was because I was born with the gift of the sin of gluttony. As I said that, they all gasped. Vexus, you mean to tell us that you have the power of a sin? Don't you know how rare that is, but also that the whole world is looking for sin holders solely for the purpose of killing them? The kings of this world are jealous of the power you and the others like you wield and have tried countless times to extract that power only to fail endlessly to the point where they put a bounty on anyone who even suggests that they have a sin. I was a bit shocked by this new information. I knew that sin held great potential but to be hunted down because of it. That was honestly something I see humans doing. Okay, that makes sense. I nodded in understanding as Kitsoma told me this. Yeah, I can see that happening. Humans are weak by nature and in turn seek out any source of power they can get. I know that feeling all too well myself. I stopped saying anything further unless I wanted to give away my secret of reincarnating from another world. After the talk between us, they decided that we should go ahead and finish the tunnel ourselves and use the others as bait to lure the slavers away. The bad news was that Sundar and Digger are the only Earth users, but Digger specialized in using the Earth to move faster through it while Sundar specialized in defensive Earth magic. I was able to combine their efforts where I would have Digger go through the Earth towards the outside and leave the loosened Earth behind me as a way to mark our path, and using that I had Sundar use his defensive Earth magic to create a small shield on his hand in which to use as a shovel. While this is a unique way to use my magic, I never would have guessed that by concentrating my earthen body skill on my hand and shaping it could I ever form something like this. This has opened up my eyes to other possibilities. Sundar said as he used his enormous strength to shovel mounds of earth around. We quickly ran into a problem of where the freshly shoveled dirt would go, and after thinking for a few minutes I offered a solution in which I could use my abyssal stomach skill to consume the dirt. They were a bit shocked that I possessed such a skill, but I just told them that gluttony was a sin that was commonly viewed as eating mass amounts of food, so a skill like this would be obvious to have. They nodded after hearing that, and so for hours we continued doing that, Sundar shoveling huge amounts of dirt and me chewing on mounds of dirt. We would take breaks every now and then, and I would have Digger go straight through the ceiling till he hit the surface to let some air flow down to us. I remembered old stories where miners would asphyxiate and choke because of how poor the air quality was back in the old days of Earth. Howie asked why we didn't just dig straight up after Digger and escape that way, which was a good point that I unfortunately did not even think about. I was only worried about air quality and had completely overlooked it. At which point I almost face-palmed until Kitsoma spoke up, saving me from the humiliation. Don't you think Vexus already thought of that? I can only assume that he figured out that there would be guards all over the place on the surface, so he is using small air pockets to instead help us breath down here so that we can go unnoticed for as long as possible. I was internally dumbfounded at how amazing her analytical skills were. That was until after everyone got back to work and she leaned over to me and whispered, "I knew you hadn't thought about that, but I wasn't going to say anything, so you owe me one. But since I think you're pretty interesting, I'll wait to name my price." She smiled at me and winked before turning back to the others like nothing happened. Just what the hell happened here? She knew I was an idiot from the get-go. I am gonna have to step up my game and get better at planning stuff out. She is a dangerous woman, and in more ways than one, as I notice a short swish of her tail and her lightly swaying her hips back and forth as she walks in front of me. Oh, this chick is definitely dangerous. She's gonna start something that I may or may not want started. I chuckle lightly at that thought and continue eating dirt like the moron that I am. Some rather inconvenient news came shortly after as Digger came rushing back. Boss, we got bad news. Up ahead is what looks like a small cavern. Thankfully there's no humans, but bad news is that there are what look like a small goblin outpost. Shit, also I'm not your boss. But shit, this is bad news. We need to keep going. Is there a way around it? Yes, you're the boss now, boss, and no, there is some strange hardened stone that is blocking me from scouting around it. The only way is to either go to the surface or tunnel into the cavern with the goblins. Ugh, great, I wasn't wanting any bad news like this, but oh well. I shook my head and I turned to Kitsoma and asked her opinion. Hey Kitsoma, so remind me, does this world have dungeons? I have only lived in isolation for the better part of my life and have only read of such things existing but have never entered one. Again they all looked shocked at what I told them before shaking their head. Yes, there are dungeons in this world, but most of them have a surface entrance that has already been found and are often monopolized by the humans by way of a dungeon guild. Great, so from what I have read the dungeons are surrounded by a hard indestructible material, correct? She opened her eyes wide after shortly realizing what I'm implying. With a nod at her I look at Digger. Okay man, this is the plan. We are going to enter the cave. This is a dungeon and we are going to use it to get back to the surface. We can also use this as a good opportunity to get stronger in the process. A small argument over the benefits of doing such a thing ensued, where eventually they all saw it my way and we tunneled towards the goblin dungeon. On the way I devised a formation where upon entry Sundar would be the main tank and draw their attention while me and Howie deal damage under the cover of my smoke. Kitsoma will either hinder them further with her illusion magic or cover our retreat with fire magic should they prove too difficult. Sylvania was assigned as Kitsoma's guardian to make sure no stray goblin decided to take out the mage. Digger lastly would be the sneaky assassin who would deal as much damage as possible in any way he could and then run away using guerrilla tactics. We agreed and decided to rest before we made the final push through the weakened dungeon wall. I took this time to try out a new idea I had and started circulating the mana through my body before pushing small amounts of it into my eyes, and while they were closed I warned everyone to hold their breath as I let out a huge smoke breath and filled the tunnel until nothing could be seen. I open my eyes and concentrating on the magic in my eyes I try to focus on seeing the heat from the others. After a while I was slowly able to see a faint silhouette of the others through the smoke before I started hearing coughing from the others. Yet again I didn't think things through and in a panic I started sucking in the smoke in huge gulps of air and also used small spatial bullets tossed at the back of the tunnel to help suck away the smoke. Thankfully after a quick checkup nobody was seriously hurt and was quickly healed by using a combination of MP share and life steal. Using myself as the target I was able to take away some of my health to heal the others. After that fiasco I was able to get the skill heat vision, which was the original purpose of my experiment to help with what we were about to do, but I was interrupted by a hand slamming into the back of my head. You asshole, what was that for? You could have killed us by doing that, Sundar said as he rubbed his hand. The others also glared at me in anger. I'm sorry, I swear I was just trying to get a new skill to help me with our plan. I didn't mean to do anything harmful to you all. Plus I made it better by healing you guys, didn't I? I said shamefully. Yeah, I guess, but man, you gotta give us way more warning than a, hey, hold your breath real quick. I barely got a breath in before I was covered in smoke. And what skill were you trying to get? And you had better say you got it. Howie said, I got a skill, got heat vision, that would let me see a silhouette of a target's heat signature even if my vision is impaired, say like if smoke was concealing their position. Oh well, that will come in handy, sorta like a snake, right? Yeah, like a snake, even though I'm a dragon and deep down I get a feeling of being insulted, but yes, sure, like a snake. Hey dipshit, you're the one who almost killed us. I think you being referred to as a snake is okay, Sundar said, still understandably upset. The others voiced similar opinions laced with barely passable words of congratulations. After that we take a longer break to recoup, and after a quick discussion and a quick scout from Digger we decide that the coast was clear enough for us all to take a short nap to really get a mental refresher. Smoke breath, 3. 4. MP share, 1. 2. Life steal, 1. 2. Heat vision, 0/50. User is able to sense the heat of others when vision is otherwise impaired. Life share, LVL 00/10. User sacrifices health to heal others. Chapter 35. The Dragon Gets a Minion. You are listening at novelfull.audio. After taking a short nap to get a decent energy boost in preparation for the upcoming goblin killing, I was surprised by a sudden mid-dream visit by gluttony as I felt a pull in my head and then a quick suction as my subconscious was whisked away. Vexus, my boy, how are you this morning, right? Is it morning in your world? I can never tell from where I am. Well, that right there leads me to ask, where the hell are you if you are not a part of my world? But as to answer your first question, I wouldn't know. See, I was captured by slavers shortly after escaping from my so-called master, who was all along really just a delivery boy for a necromancer. I escaped with a few other captives, dug a tunnel, killed and ate an orc who was getting a bit big for his britches and enjoyed every second of it, by the way. Lost all of the other captives except for 5 who I somehow feel really good about, and now we are currently sleeping and then going to kill goblins in a dungeon. After saying all that, I got a feeling that a wave of shock went over the Sin. Wow, you sure had it rough. I didn't think that something like that would happen, but hey, the world is a random place. I knew there were slavers in your world as I had connections with other potential descendants before you, but their lights were shortly blown out by the other Sins. But anyways, back to the reason I called you here. I see that you have not accomplished any more of the tasks I had set out for you. Any reason why? I know you were busy, but I need you to deal with those as soon as you can, or else I'll have to start applying penalties to them. Like what? As I told you, I am busy and recently have not been able to really take a good look at and invest time in your damn tasks. With a huff I turn my mental head away from the Sin, only to have it take my head and force me to look towards it. Listen here, you little shit, I gave you power and I will take it away along with everything else you have gained after the fact. You were deserving of it because you vowed to get stronger. Right now you are taking it easy compared to back then when I found your pathetic runt of a body and granted it a new soul and your power. Either you get busy doing what I want you to do or you will lose it all. I felt an immense pressure start to slam down on me, and then I felt it start to encircle me until I was in a cocoon formed from the power that gluttony was emitting. With what little speech I could muster I whispered out, I'm sorry. Please. Stop. Seconds later the pressure vanished as my mind felt like inhaling deeply, like a person who was held under water for too long and the lungs were getting desperate for air. Gluttony looked to have grown tremendously as it leaned down like a titan leaning down to look at an ant. With a now androgynous but all-powerful voice it spoke again. Good, now you felt what a small percentage of power I hold over you. I will be back in 1 week. You had better have finished at least one of the tasks I gave you. If not, I will strip you of your power and force you to fight an endless horde of demons until your very soul gets torn apart. Those words were the last spoken as the Sin dissipated into nothingness, and I woke up to reality with a jump and with cold sweat pouring down my body. The others were startled awake from that and were instantly in battle position. Calm down guys, just had a nice chat with my Sin. I forgot to complete some tasks it set out for me and has threatened to take away all my power in a week should I fail again. They all had looks of fear from hearing that. Howie spoke up first. Dude, you mean to tell me you were given tasks by an all-powerful entity such as a Sin but you just shrugged it off? How big are your balls, man? That is not a good thing to do. Plus, from what I heard through the grapevine, the Sins hand out rewards to their holders after they accomplished one. Yeah, well, my Sin is a bit different. I gain all the power on my own and it seems to leech off of that. I get a massive headache and a searing pain from the communication seal before a booming voice roars in my head. I do not leech, you insolent fool. Do not besmirch me to your companions or I will make you kill them. I was greatly weakened just then as the voice and presence left me as suddenly as it arrived. The others were quick to gather around me and make sure I was okay. I'm okay, I just should not have said that, even if I meant it playfully. The Sin on the other hand did not take it like that, and so it made me weak as punishment just now. But back to business. I will look at the tasks after we finish with this outpost. We spent way too long because of me and now it's time for some action. Okay, but should you need to come to the back line with me and Sylvania and rest? Kitsoma said before turning, mentally preparing for a fight. I was definitely weakened from that outburst, but I wasn't going to show it to these new people. Even though I felt a bond starting to form, I wasn't stupid enough to start showing weakness. I play it off and start preparing. Oswell, I start off by activating my tried and true electric scales. But before we start, I had a great idea as I call Digger over and tell him to dig out a small hole into the dungeon, just enough to let smoke through. Oh boss, I get it, you're going to start the fight off with a smoke screen, and if we're lucky you might even kill off some of the weaker ones, seeing as how bad it was for me to breathe earlier. Yeah, just do it, man. I feel shitty enough that I didn't think things through. He was thankfully small enough to not get noticed by the goblins as he dug through the wall, and after a deep inhale I slowly let it out as I used my rolling fog. I took it slow and eventually I could see that on the other side of the hole was nothing but smoke as I started hearing panicked voices coming from the other side in the form of different kikik and hacks and coughs. After a little bit I started to hear what sounded like gagging and even vomiting, so I took that as the signal to start the attack. Okay everyone, it's go time. I think they are sufficiently weakened, so let's get this over with now. Be prepared because there will be a lot of smoke, but the initial blast from breaking through should dissipate enough for you to see. I will activate heat vision as soon as the wall goes down and start attacking. How will you take advantage of the weakened ones and deal killing blows to whatever goblin is nearby? Got it. With a round of nods from the others I stand behind Sundar, and with a tap on his back he forms 2 earthen clubs and slams into the wall. Heat vision immediately is activated and shows me that there are at least 20 goblins. Some are on the ground and slowly losing heat, but some of the others are still moving around, gasping their necks and waving the other arm, looking for anything in the smoke. Then I spot a group of 5 that are huddled in a corner with one standing in front with something in its hands, waving it back and forth. I decide that after taking care of the other stragglers we can take care of whatever goblin can survive my smoke. I used my lightning muscle skill to quickly move around and use my shadow strike skill to quickly put an end to each of the goblins moving around. Since they were weak already, it only took me about 2 hits to finish them off. I killed about 5 this way, with Howie killing the other remaining 5 like this. It seemed that the few that were on the ground that had already died were naturally weak to begin with and could not hold out. The others didn't really have any room to move as they tried to avoid my smoke as much as possible. Sundar mostly just checked the goblins that had already died to make sure they were dead, and the other 3 just kept a watchful eye out. Seeing as they didn't have heat vision and I was too busy to call out anything, they had no other choice but stay vigilant. After killing the remaining goblins I started to suck away the smoke and shoot out small spatial bullets. Which I started thinking and wondering why me using it like this wasn't increasing its usage within the system. But I just chalked it up to having to have a target in order to be registered as being used. But after the smoke cleared I was able to see clearly that the green goblin who was protecting the others was in fact some sort of wizard or maybe even a shaman, because in its hand was a staff with a pale green gem embedded at the top and it had a small green force field around it and the others. Ah, so that's how it survived. It must have sensed how dangerous my smoke was and took action immediately. I thought, looking over the others behind it, that it was maybe the leader or maybe just an opportunist, seeing as how the other goblins had slight feminine features. By no means were they pretty, but compared to goblins that I've seen pictures of and had read about in the other world, you could say that in comparison to those, these goblin women were knockouts. I stopped the others before they moved to kill them as I wanted info, and hopefully the one with the staff had enough mental acuity to speak. My name is Vexus. I am willing to spare your lives in exchange for info. We.name, Shorunt.u.kill.us. No, if you give me what I want I will not kill you. Shorunt.make, deal, what want to know. Okay, good Shorunt, now listen, we are in need of some help. Food, water, things like that. Do you have that nearby? Yes, we have food, water but not much. After invasion by enemy tribe l.rg. Hold on, since I am getting a headache waiting for the next word, I am going to give you a gift to hopefully speed up this process. I'm already agitated and this is pushing me over the edge. I walk up to Shorunt and place the tip of my claw on its forehead. I focus my magic on the tip of the claw and imagine passing down knowledge and more intelligence before pressing it into Shorunt's head. I heard a small squelch as the claw dug in and a trickle of blood appeared. Shorunt gave out a small squeak of pain before falling to its knees after I pulled the claw out. Frighteningly, the claw started to erode and disintegrate, but shortly after I was snapped out of it by some great news. User has completed its first monster contract. User has gained the ability to tame monsters. User has 9 out of 10 contracts left. The named monster, Shorunt, will now be under user's control. Shorunt will now gain a small portion of user's power. I felt a wave of weakness overtake me as a small green aura split off from me and enveloped Shorunt. It opened its eyes before looking around, and once its eyes locked onto me it shouted in joy before bowing and even going so far as to kowtow. Master, oh master, thank you so much for giving Shorent so much knowledge. I will be your faithful servant and even sacrifice my life should it be required. The others around me were shocked. Holy shit Vexus, what did you just do? Did you just tame this goblin? Sundar spoke up with complete shock in his voice. This should not be possible between creatures like us. I have heard demi-humans being capable of doing this, but actual monsters or even intelligent ones should not have the ability to tame other monsters. Kitsoma said with a look of pure excitement, almost as if this is a new and intriguing thing that she can't wait to figure out. Boss, this is awesome. This guy looks like a wizard or maybe even a druid. Either way, from the green glow he should have a nature affinity, which is super rare for goblins to have. But that leads the question, what is he doing way out here instead of wherever the goblins' main base it? Digger, that is a very good question. Shorent, I assure you that this is completely new to me, so let's just take it easy and start from the top. I know we have made a contract, but I still need info, so let's go with Digger's question. Why are you here and not at the goblins' main base? With a look of shame, Shorent looks down and a tear escapes his eyes. Shorent is ashamed to admit, but I am not a very good wizard. My ability is only based around shields, and maybe I can help grow plants, but I did not want the life of a mushroom farmer. I wanted to become a warrior and fight the vicious red goblins. Okay, I get that. Well, lucky for us then, right guys? But now let's turn our attention to these ladies over here. As I look at the four goblinettes that were both cowering in fear but also quite curious about the sudden change in the goblin that protected them from the smoke that killed all the others. Master, they are the entertainment for the goblins that were posted here. I will admit that I was going to save them in the hopes of gaining their trust to do what goblins are best known for. Ah, I see. Well, not like I wouldn't do the same thing if I was in your shoes, Shorent, but I don't think you had a chance in the first place, ha ha ha. I'm just kidding. Yes, I am your master technically, but I am perfectly fine if you address me as Vexus or Ugh, I guess, boss. Digger hooped at that last part, making me sigh. Very well, I appreciate it, Moss. I mean, boss. I admit I was afraid of what your intentions were, but after the quick exchange between us my mind was flooded with info about you and your life. I am surprised you are a rain car. I slammed my hand down on his mouth to stop him from speaking anymore. Ha 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 ha, oh man, it looks like he went a little crazy, maybe too much info into short of span of time. Maybe we should let him rest while we deal with the others. Kitsoma, can you do me a favor and knock him out? Sure, but we aren't dumb, Vexus. We heard what he said. You are gonna explain it to us, right? Ugh, fine, I will, but not now. Okay, I don't know how you'll react and I don't want to ruin this right now. I still need help and I feel like we have a good thing here. The others look at each other, then look at me. Sundar steps up to me and puts his hand on my shoulder. Look man, I get it and I feel a bond forming between us. I will wait till after we get settled before bringing this back up, but when we do I expect you to explain it all. Electric scales of vitality, 5. 6. Rolling fog, 6. 7. Heat vision, 0. 1. Shadow strike, 3. 13. Taming, LVL 0 1/10. User can tame and control monsters equal to user's power level. Chance to fail increases depending on power gap of stronger beings and user. Chapter 36. The Dungeon Crawl. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Mast. I mean, boss, if you will allow it I will dispose of these goblin women. No, Shorent, I think I have another use for these chicks. And before you get any ideas, it is not for that reason. I actually think that now would be the time to start on a plan I've been working on. I look over the goblinettes. Goblinas. Whatever, I look over the goblin chicks and after a short glance I ask if they have any other skills besides just being used as stress relievers. One of the braver ones, who was fascinated by me contracting with Shorent, spoke up. She pointed at herself, me, me. Like swing sword. Hate being used that will fight for. Boss. After she spoke up the other three got the courage to speak up. There was besides Kana, there was another one who had a fascination with how fast I ran through the smoke, and after asking how she could see me, she said that she had a rare ability that enhanced her vision and allowed her to see the aura of the things around her. The other two, after frowning saying they were not really good at using weapons, gave me the idea to go ahead and bring them along for an experiment I had brewing. I think that if I gave them help I might be able to awaken their magical potential, if any. Okay, before we head out let's go ahead and set up contracts, okay? First Kana, come here. After her I did the others, who were named Leosa, Tanoa, and Vinoa. The last two, after becoming able to speak more fluently, were found out to be sisters. So I was definitely confident of their magical potential. User has created contracts with 4 goblins. User has 5 contracts remaining. Boss, thank you for sparing the women. After receiving your blessing and knowledge, the ideas that have been flowing through my mind are astounding. Your idea of training Tanoa and Vinoa to use magic is never before heard of for monsters like us. Usually people come into the dungeon to hunt us and gain the items that are dropped upon our death. Again, thank you for taking pity on us and giving us a chance. We will not let you down. I went ahead and made Shorent the leader of the newly made goblin squad. Using the weapons and other things dropped from the dead goblins, we were able to equip the goblinettes with fitting weapons. Kana got a decent short sword and a small buckler-like shield. Leosa was giving 2 daggers, and I put Howie in charge of training her, seeing as how he is the most rogue-like. Tanoa and Vinoa were giving swords and shields for now to at least protect themselves until I am able to get to a place to start awakening their magic. After that we head towards an abandoned part of the cave that Shorent said that all goblins avoid because of some beasts that emerged there a while back. So I figured we go there, take over the area and proceed to train ourselves before taking over the rest of the cave and controlling the goblins. I knew it was a tall order, but after finding out what the future of this world holds and how the guardians of this world were instead helping to annihilate everybody, I decided to erect my own army and train them to become the best and strongest in the whole world and ultimately eliminate the Shadow Eaters once and for all. I have Digger continue scouting ahead, and every once in a while he would come back saying that there were cave bats and other creatures ahead of us. I used that as an opportunity to test the new recruits and had Kitsoma shoot a small fireball to alert our would-be training dummies. Now these bats are going to be your first test. We will be here to help should things get too hectic for you guys, but overall this will be all up to you. They nodded and got ready. The 4 women were up front while Shorent was behind them. He said a few short incoherent words and waved his staff over the others, and soon they started to glow green. Just as the bats appeared and dove straight at them, Kana was the first to react by swinging downwards and getting lucky as she split one of the bats in half, but because she used too much power she flung herself forwards after slamming her sword into the ground. Leosa was doing fairly well between defending against multiple attacks and even going so far as to aim for the wings when she couldn't land a killing blow. I had to enhance my vision a bit with mana to keep up with how fast she would swing every now and again. It appeared that she had a latent skill that would activate, but it looked like she wasn't fully in control of it. Tanoa and Vinoa looked quite hilarious swinging their swords in a squeamish fashion, mostly trying to keep the bats away. Howie, did you notice how fast Leosa would swing every now and again? Yeah, I have. It would appear she has a latent skill that she can't quite use. Let me guess, you want me to focus on awakening it. Damn right, man, you are the best bet, since I am a 4-legged monster and will soon be focusing on magic casting. Howie only sighed but agreed nonetheless. He could see the potential in her, same as me. Now what else do we think of the new recruits? I can see that the sisters are going to be useless at close range, but that can be mildly fixed with some training, but I still feel like they will be better off at long range. If they have no magical potential, they could have a future maybe as a ranged fighter. Kitsoma and Sylvania looked at the girls before speaking. Well, I would say that I can feel a residual heat coming from Vinoa, so I hope she awakens into a fire user, but for Tanoa I feel cold, so maybe she has ice. Even still, maybe we should give them some ranged training. I am adequately useful with a bow if we decide to do that. Kitsoma says, while Sylvania agrees and adds a few words. Oswell. I may not be able to help with ranged training, but I do have a slight affinity with ice magic besides my wind off course. If she awakens into an ice user, I can help with that. I was happy with that, as a plan was slowly taking form and cementing in my head for the future of my little group here. The only problem was Kana. Since none of us were truly a swordsman, she would either have to rely on Howie's training or learn to become better herself. I could help her become faster and stronger by training her myself, but would that be the best? I couldn't really come up with a good idea for her right now, as I hear a scream come from Tanoa. Dnov she had been bitten by a huge cave bat that far exceeded the size of the others. Oh shit, Vexus, that is a dire cave bat. Not only is it stronger than the rest, but it is vampiric. It will stay latched on and drain the blood of the victim until death. We have to help her. Damn it, well, I knew it was too good to be true. I race ahead of the others and shoot out a lightning slash to try paralyze it and have it let go, or at the very least make it stop sucking the blood from Tanoa. It hits, but the after effects didn't take, as just 3 long gashes appeared but shortly disappeared as the wounds visibly healed. Vexus, as long as it's attached it will continue to heal. You have to get it off her first. Shit, okay, plan B. Hey you bat, wouldn't you like dragon's blood better than nasty goblin blood? I didn't really expect a blood-sucking monster to have any intelligence, but surprisingly it looked over at me with bloodshot eyes and threw away Tanoa. Thankfully she was thrown towards the others, who rushed over to help her, while the big-ass bat flew at Mach 10 towards me. I raise myself and embrace it, letting it latch onto me before I look into its eyes. That weirded me out majorly, because its eyes were rolled up into the back of its head, almost like it was getting pleasure out of this. You, what the hell, you're nasty up close, but unlucky for you, batty boy, that you latched onto the wrong dragon. I activated all of my lightning skills and focused it all onto the area it was sucking from. After getting a huge shock, it froze up with visible arcs all over its body. I smiled as I activated life steal and bit into the bat, draining not only its blood but its very life force. User has absorbed the life force of the monster, dire cave bat. User has gained 2 points in vitality. Their body slowly became a husk as it dried up. I dropped it with a wipe of my face. I noticed that the rest of the bats either fled or were killed by the others. I smiled while walking up to them. Great job guys, I see a lot of dead and dying bats around here. Now I was busy, so let me know how they did. Sundar placed his hands on Kana's shoulder and smiled. This little lady was excellent. She had killed quite a few of the bats, as well as taking on a defensive role after Tanoa became injured. If you think it's a good idea, Oswell, I would like to take her under my wing and train her to be a fighter. Perfect, this way almost all of the new recruits have trainers and I can help out where needed. I nodded. That sounds perfect, man. I was fretting over who could train her, and to be honest I was worried about training her myself, in fear of training her the wrong way. But if you believe you can bring out her potential, then by all means she is your disciple now. His smile gets even bigger, almost as if this simple action of declaring her as his disciple was the best thing in the world to him. I began to think that this guy wears his heart on his sleeve and doesn't really give too much thought to things. Boss, we got bad news up ahead and quickly coming this way. Digger interrupted the moment and informed me that up ahead there were a pack of red goblins that were headed this way. I'm assuming either the rush of the bats or the noise of the fireball had drawn them in. Okay Kitsoma, think you can create an illusion for us? I want us to create a little alcove here and let them pass by, but I doubt we will have enough time to cover us up completely. I don't know how strong they are, and after what happened I don't want to risk the newbies. Gotcha, I can try, but no promises. It all depends on how big of an illusion I'll have to conjure up. If it's a matter of mana, don't worry and just let me handle that. I have a skill that can replenish your mana continuously. Not talking any further, we got to work and quickly dug out a hole in the wall big enough for us to crowd into. Kitsoma quickly cast an illusion that made it seem as if it was just a normal wall. I placed a paw on her body and started channeling MP Share. I felt her jump and her body heated up for a second as a small moan escaped her. I blushed a bit thinking about how this was the same reaction that Lizaria had the couple of times I used it on her. I felt something start to brush against my body, not knowing what it was. I used my other paw and grabbed it rather firmly in case it was maybe a cave snake or something else. That was until I saw Kitsoma slap a hand over her mouth just in time for a muffled moan to force its way out of her mouth. I looked down and see that I had grabbed not a snake or anything cave-related, but instead I had grabbed onto her tail with a firm grip. In a hushed tone I whispered, Shit, Kitsoma, I'm sorry, I didn't know it was your tail." "Well, idiot, you should have looked. Beastman and demi-humans are very sensitive when it comes to our tails. You'll pay for this after we get through this." Taming, 1. 5. Lightning slash, 0. 2. Lightning muscles, 2. 4. Electric scales of vitality, 6. 7. Life steal, 2. 3. Vitality 10.5. 12.5 HP 600. 750 MP share, 2. 3. Chapter 37. The Dragon and the Ant. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Before I could apologize again to her, I heard a raspy voice come from the other side of the wall. Unfortunately, only Kitsoma could see through her illusions, so I had her relay what was happening. "There are about 10 red goblins with one of them in front that has some sort of nasty leather-like armor. It's got a very sharp pointed stone spear. Oh gods, the leather armor is green goblin skin. Okay, so our main priority right now is to lay low. We don't know how strong these guys are, and if they have backup close by, just keep an eye on them and let's hope they pass by. Okay, right now it looks like they are just investigating the dead bats. They found the dried up body of the big bat. Looks like they are surprised. The leader is excited about something. They are packing up the bats and leaving from the direction they came from. Ah, damn it, not like we needed food or anything. Damn goblins. Oops, no offense guys, I meant damn red goblins." I looked back and smiled sheepishly towards the goblins, who looked at me with upset faces like a child who pouts at their parents. I admit it was cute. Thank God they aren't as ugly as the other world made them out to be. "Let's move out, Sundar. You get ready just in case there are some stragglers." "How we get ready, Oswell? We are going to need some speed to cut them off if there are some left over." With nods we all get prepared shortly before Kitsoma lets down her illusion. We look around and all that's left is just the dried husk of the dire bat. I looked around hoping for maybe some dungeon drops like in games, but if there were any, then I'm guessing the red goblins picked them all up and left. "Vexus, come look at Tanoa. She is starting to foam at the mouth. Man, what's going on?" I look over, and on Tanoa's neck where she was bitten was a puffed up and highly aggravated wound that was leaking blood and pus. She was starting to foam out the mouth and had slight convulsions. This is what I know as rabies, but it shouldn't have been this fast. I don't know what to do. Do any of you maybe have healing magic? I looked at them with hopeful optimism, only to shortly fall as they all said no until Shorent spoke up. "I can cast a small healing spell, but I don't think it is strong enough to cure this." "Great, Shorent, that will at least buy us some time to figure out something else to do. Go ahead and start casting and I will help you like I did with Kitsoma." With a look of nervousness, Shorent muttered a few words with a wave of his staff over Tanoa's body, and shortly after a green light starts to shine from the staff to cover over her. I step up behind him and activate MP share. I then activated MP absorption to keep my MP maxed out. I then had an idea. "Hey Shorent, I want you to focus and pour all of your mana into that spell. Can you do it?" "Yes sure, but I don't see how that will make a difference." "Just do it, okay? Just think of me like a battery for your spell. Take as much from me as you need." Almost like a floodgate opening, I feel my mana rush out of me into his body. Thankfully I had maxed out absorption, or else I would not have been able to stay conscious with how much he was taking away from me. I had to go full blast with the skill because even at max it was still not absorbing enough from the ambient mana in the air to keep up with the pull. User has exceeded maximum mana, / eminent. User has exceeded maximum mana, / eminent. Thankfully the green light started to shine brighter until it went from a deep green to an almost bright emerald, and the light seemed to not only cover Tanoa but also seemed to get absorbed into her body. Her convulsions started to lessen and the wound on her neck stopped bleeding, and it slowly closed up and went to normal. Over the next 5 minutes of the constant pull from Shorent, her body started to gain back its normal color until she opened up her eyes with a look of extreme grogginess. Shorent immediately stopped the spell and the pressure on my mind instantly went away. However, because I had been pulling so much from the surroundings for so long and so fast, the sudden stop had caused almost like a brick wall that made my interior slam against it as a backlash erupted and sent me flying backwards away from Shorent. "Master," is all I heard before a loud crash as my body slams into the cave wall and I become embedded in it. User exceeded maximum mana, backlash will now occur to help stabilize. I stared at that message for a couple seconds until the sounds of the others asking if I was okay came rushing back. Master, are you okay?" "Good God, yes, I'm okay. It was just a mana backlash from using too much MP and refilling it. Just help me out the damn wall, and I told you to not call me master." "I'm sorry boss, I was just so scared after seeing you getting expelled backwards and implanted into the wall." "Are you sure you're okay? It was a pretty bad impact." They all looked at me as I shook off the dust and rocks that still clung to me. Yeah, I'm fine. It hurts, but I'll be fine. We just need to go get me some food and I'll be healed up in no time." "Okay, if you say so, but I suggest maybe we continue to try and find a cut-off section of the cave and move away from here, boss." I scouted out another section of the cave to the left of us away from the red goblins, and there seems to be some kind of nest or something over there. I couldn't see creatures, but it was dark, and if there are no vibrations then my earth sense skill is useless. "Great digger, that sounds like a good plan. Along the way we will heal up and get ready for a fight." "Sound good, everyone?" I asked just out of respect for the others, but I had already started heading that direction as a low grumble could be heard from my stomach. We continued down a path that widened out and the walls started to become smooth and had the look of almost being marble, like ending up in a large room with multiple tunnels exiting from it. "Hey, what is this? Is it marble?" I asked, taking a second to examine the wall closer. "No, I don't think it is. It looks just like the normal rock wall of the rest of the cave, but it's been smoothed down. I can't really think of anything natural that can do this." Kitsoma says, coming up next to me and looking Oswell. "Boss, I know what can do this," and I say we turn back because this is a dangerous sign. Shorent says while the other goblins shake in fear. "It's the sign that we are approaching a nest area of the cave ants." Cave ants. How can they smooth out and even widen such a large cave like this? This should take years for a colony of ants to do. At that moment, as if on cue, a black and red ant-like creature appears from a side. It had two huge mandibles on either side of a gnashing mouth that was secreting a liquid that would sizzle when it landed on the ground. Each foot had what looked like a sharp curved claw that was in a shovel form. Guys, this is no ant. Ants are tiny little things that can be stepped on. This is a monster that shovels out caves by itself. Are you saying there is a colony of these f***ing things? I say as I start backing up slowly, hoping to not move too fast as to make it start attacking us. Vexus, these are just the worker ants of the colony, the weakest but also the most abundant. If there is only one, then we are lucky. If we can kill it we can eat, and also the parts of this monster are good for equipment and weapons. Surprisingly, this time Sundar told me this when I had expected Kitsoma to offer up something insightful. It looks like when it comes to fighting, maybe a meathead like Sundar is a good source of info. Okay Sundar, have you fought something like this before? Yeah, but it wasn't easy. They have sharp mandibles that can crush you if they don't cut in half first. A strong acid melt that can melt you down, and they will also use their shovel-like claws to attack Oswell. Oh, fantastic. Here's the plan Sundar, let's go ahead and have you start making as many earth walls as you can to surround it. Keep its focus on you as much as possible, but do not take chances, okay? Just stay safe and do what you can. Sylvania, use your ice magic to cool it off. Since it's an insect it should have a weakness to cold temperatures. Kitsoma, if ice magic doesn't work then you're up. Maybe a few fireballs in its face will keep it from noticing when me and Howie go up and shave off a few legs. Is everybody ready? Then let's go. Soon an earth wall appears and surrounds the ant, while a small ice spears are thrown from above as Sylvania flies overhead. Thankfully the cave is large enough to allow her to fly with ease. Kitsoma and the goblins waited patiently as I had the goblins just wait this one out since they had a bit of trouble with the bats. Soon the ant had clawed its way over the top of the walls and we could see 3 ice spears sticking out of its carapace. It didn't seem affected at all by this, so I signaled for Kitsoma to start her attacks. Shortly after, a fireball crashed into its mandibles and exploded, causing the mandibles break off and lodge into the cave walls like blades. We heard a loud shriek of pain before the loud thudding of something hard running away from us. After the dust settled, we saw that the ant had left a trail of greenish slime like blood leading down the tunnel. "Should we follow it?" asked Howie. "Nah, let's just wait here and prepare. If I know anything, it's that it will be back and with friends. It'll be better to stay here and fortify than to chase after it and possibly run into others unprepared." I had the ideas of closing off entrances and solidifying the walls covering the tunnel so that way when they do come we could have a funnel that would give us the advantage against the huge amount that was going to be coming. I also decided to have Sundar doing the same to the entrance we came through. That way if it gets too bad we could run back that way while still having the advantage of the funnel. I planned on making use of my spatial bullets this time as it had the potential to get through their thick carapace. After about 30 short minutes we were done, and none too soon as we heard shrieks and movement coming from the other side of a few of the closed-off tunnels. "Looks like our guests have arrived. Everybody get ready because this is gonna be a doozy of a fight." I got ready as I start to see holes forming in 3 of the walls as a sizzling sound could be heard shortly after. As soon as the holes are big enough I want elemental spears thrown through. That will be the first line of offense. Sundar, Sylviana, and Kitsoma grunted in acknowledgement. I had wanted to try and use the mandibles that were blow off, but I didn't have time, so I just left them there. Hopefully they would still be there after the fight. As soon as the ants showed themselves through the holes they were instantly greeted with spears of ice, fire, and earth. I had Kitsoma use spears instead of fireballs just because I wanted the tunnels to be closed off as much as possible, and also because if they were to explode they had the potential of causing a cave-in. After a few more openings were created and the ants started pouring in, we had already killed a few of the ants with some lucky hits. I shot a spatial bullet into every hole I could see. Bad news was I had to get close as the bullets were slow moving. Good news was that the second they went past an ant I would hear loud squeals of pain and the sound of ripping. After a few more bullets I felt a sudden increase in the speed that it flew, and also it increased in size from the size of a thumbnail to the size of a baby's fist. It also increased the suction power as I felt a solid gravitational pull that started sucking in the loose rocks that tumbled from the walls and even from the ground. I heard even more painful squeals and soon it was silence. I stuck my head through one of the holes that had collapsed after my skill had gotten stronger, and I saw at least 10 ant bodies, each with different parts ripped off in a circular pattern. It looks like my bullet didn't have the power to pull the bodies into it like a black hole, but instead had carved its way through them. It looks like their armor-like exoskeleton kept them from fully succumbing to the pull, as it kept their bodies somewhat intact, but it did not stop the massive amounts of bleeding that occurred. I went back and got the goblins to come with me and help me make sure they were all dead. If they weren't, then they would be, as I shoot a spatial bullet straight into their faces. It looks as though they all died from either the spears at the start of the fight or my bullets, but they were like fish in a barrel as they couldn't even get past the walls because of Sundar constantly sending reinforcing waves of mana into them. It was easy, but I made sure to keep my ego from inflating too much to be sure I wasn't caught off guard. By the end of my investigation we had found maybe 2 or 3 who were still alive, albeit barely, but they had barely the strength to look up at us before they finally gave up. I decided that before we moved on it would be best to salvage what we could from the bodies, and if we were lucky these ants might have some cores to harvest along with their exoskeleton, mandibles, and claws that I planned on turning into armor and various weapons and tools. Vexus, this was a great outcome, but I am a bit worried about what's ahead of us. If we keep going down this path, you know we are going to eventually encounter warriors, and even worse, the queen. Kitsoma came up to me and said as she helped harvest the many materials from the bodies. Howie and Leosa had a knack for harvesting, as they somehow were able to find the weak points in the armor like shells and break them off with ease. I understand that, but if we just try and find a way to the surface without getting stronger, what happens when we run into those slavers again? I felt power radiating from that big guy that I couldn't match. All of us together could probably take him, but that would be a risk I don't want to take with you guys. We discussed what the plans were for the fights ahead as I had Sundar create a huge bowl and had Sylvania fill it with ice. I also had Kitsoma heat up the bowl until the ice melted, then I threw in some of the ant meat and made an impromptu stew for all of us while I became a mana battery again. This time, however, I regulated how much I drew in and even let my natural mana drain before using absorption. User has devoured the flesh of cavernous worker ant, will now auto-assimilate. Generating skill list, acid spit. User will now secrete weak acid from its mouth. Iron carapace. User will grow a iron-like covering over its body to further enhance defense at the expense of mobility. Pheromone sense. User will now be able to detect and use pheromones. I was happy to finally see this pop back up since it had been so long since I gained a skill through using gluttony. I looked each skill over, seeing the different potential uses, but in the end I decided to pick pheromone sense just because if I could use it like many different animals and insects did, then I had the capability to attract creatures into an ambush situation, and with better control, who knows, maybe I could even cause hallucinations or even control what they thought. We finished eating and got to work on attaching armor to the goblins and Howie using the leather armor and cloth scraps as bindings. They were the ones picked to have the armor because 1. They were the weakest defense-wise. 2. Me and Sundar had tough exteriors already, in addition to also a buffing skill to further enhance our defense. And finally 3. Because Kitsoma refused, saying it was too heavy for a mage such as herself. After that I went ahead and took some of the mandibles and grating them against themselves I was able to cut off a few to the size of a short sword, that way 1 could be used by Kana and 4 could be split up between Howie and Leosa. As we got packed up with a wagon-like sled from some of the bigger pieces of leftover carapace, we set off further into the ant tunnels. MP share, 3. 10, MP share, LVL 0. 1, MP share, 0. 10 20ths, spatial bullet, 6. 0, spatial bullet, LVL 0. 1, spatial bullet, 0. 2, pheromone sense, LVL 00 out of 10. User will now be able to detect and use pheromones. Chapter 38. Surprise. Shorent learns a skill. You are listening at novelfull.audio. We had been wandering the tunnels for a couple hours. Every so often we would encounter an ant worker or maybe a small group of them. I decided that I wanted to go ahead and have the goblins train some more, so whenever we encountered a lone ant the goblins would fight, whereas when it was a group then the stronger members of the group would take over and the goblins were on harvesting duty. That way they felt like actual members and not just slaves. I had gotten a good grasp on my new pheromone sense thanks to how the ants used it as directions for the others and also as a warning to danger and to alert others for help. I was able to identify the different pheromones as the ability gained more uses, and using that knowledge we started paying special attention to the organs we harvested in order to utilize the glands as either traps or distractions as we further explored the ant cave. After what seemed like hours we stumbled upon a room filled with different sized eggs. Some were large and twice the size of Sundar, while some were as big as Shorent. But in the center was an egg that was the size of the smaller eggs, but it was placed in such a way that it seemed almost like it stood above the others. Welp, looks like we landed into a bad place. If we get discovered here then we are in for a huge beatdown. This is a surefire way to summon warriors, but who else wants to grab that important looking egg over there, haha. I laugh as I get the sudden urge to go grab it in the hopes that when it hatches I can contract a queen ant. Dude, are you wanting to go grab that egg because you want to tame a queen? Howie says as the rest of the group look at me with the same thought almost printed on their foreheads. Am I that easy to read? I just thought that the potential a tamed queen has outweighs the risks of this particular situation. I muttered as the gazes of the team start to weigh on me. But fine, I understand it is super risky, so instead let's just back away and hope that we don't get caught. What if we start a fire in here? That way the ants are too busy with that and we can travel back towards the goblin side of the cave to deal with any stragglers. Having a quick second to think things through, I came up with that plan so that instead we could hopefully find and kill any weakened ants that were trying to escape. Boss, why don't we try and use these creatures to fight the red goblins? Shorent came up and asked. How do you suppose we do that? After asking that, I facepalm as I just thought of the way. Never mind, I already know how. But we would need a few of the eggs to use as bait, and we would have to go harvest more pheromone glands from the worker ants. We first use the glands to lure in the workers towards the red goblin side. Of course we would have to scout out the area first to find out the main base, then smash a few of the eggs, then throwing the rest at the goblins along with whatever glands we have left to make sure the ants think they stole the eggs. It will lure the warriors out, leaving at most a few royal guard warriors and the queen left over. But we would have to hurry, because if they wipe out the goblins and return in the middle of our fight, then we are going to be royally screwed. I went on to further explain some more details of the plan, but overall they agreed and we started hunting down the ants. We killed a few more workers before we were too tired to continue, so we decided to back out and go to the entrance room that we turned into a rest area to relax and eat some bland ant meat. Hey Vexus, what are your plans once we get out of here? I know that I plan on going back home to my family, but after getting a taste of adventuring like this, I might become an adventurer. Sundar said in between huge gulps of the boiled ant meat. I plan on roaming around and gathering strength. There are people I need to rescue. I said only the basics, as I didn't want to reveal my whole plan of gathering an army and training to fight the Shadow Eaters. I saw Kitsoma and Sylvania look at each other after I said that, but I was too tired to think much on it. After eating, I said my goodnights and curled up in a corner to get a couple hours of shut-eye. Sundar and Howie had volunteered for guard duty, so the rest of us can sleep. Those hours spent sleeping were restless, as the thoughts of my past life came crashing down on me for some reason. I was back on Earth, driving to and from work every day, doing the same things every day, day in day out for years. Back then I watched anime and read web novels and webtoons about people reincarnating into other worlds filled with magic and so many different ways to live life that wasn't centered solely on a person's bank account. People lived by their strength and abilities. They could live different lives that they chose themselves. I remember being so depressed when those stories would end and I was stuck back in reality, living just to pay another bill. I had a family that I loved more than anything, but when I think about the monotony of my life back then compared to what I'm doing now, I feel ashamed to admit, but I love it. Yeah, I have been hurt horribly and have almost died a couple times, but the insanity and the excitement that this world has shown me made me fall in love with this new life. I was woken up shortly after having that dream by Shorent. Boss, wake up, you sounded like you were having a bad dream. He raised up and stepped back as I opened my eyes and could feel as tears were drying. Yeah, it appears so. I was just dreaming about some painful memories, that's all. But enough about that, fill me in anything going on while I slept. I got up and shook the tiredness out as I walked over to munch on some reheated ant meat that the recently wakened Kitsoma had gotten ready. Digger came by a few minutes ago and he said he has found the Red Goblin's home, but it is in the center of a dozen or so outposts filled with about 30 or so goblins posted at each one. As he got closer, he said he could feel that each outpost felt like it had stronger and stronger goblins. He even reported seeing a few human-sized goblins wielding various weapons and covered in clad armor, almost looking like ogres. Okay, so the plan is still a go. We just need to work on getting stronger a bit longer than expected, but seeing as how the ants are respawning at a good rate, it means we can farm them for a while before moving ahead with the plan. We can turn this room into a good defensible position in the meantime and use this as our temporary base. The others thought it was a good idea, so we got to work. I decided to start by improving my skills, mostly my buffs, just because it comes in handy in a team setting. I had Sundar expand the room to make way for a training area of sorts so I could train the goblins a bit, as I was the closest to an actual monster. Okay, so I want Tanoa and Vinoa to take these monster cores we got from the ants, and I want you to focus on sending energy any way you can into it. Shorent, you have your staff, so I want you to focus on supplying it with energy and then support Kana and Leosa as they spar with me. Got it? They got to work immediately as the two hopeful mages started focusing and meditating over the cores, and Shorent slowly brightened the jewel on top of his staff with his magic. Kana and Leosa both got into a battle stance as I walked slowly around them. Girls, I will start by running straight at you. I won't use my full strength until you prove yourself capable of handling it, but I still want you to do your best, I say before sprinting towards them. I jump as I reach them and land behind them as I send a light tail whip towards Kana. She was just a hair too slow as my tail hits her shoulder as she was raising the newly made carapace shield that had dropped unexpectedly from a tougher than normal worker ant. Kana slid back a few steps but bounced back quickly as she and Leosa ran side by side before splitting up and rushing at my sides. I was impressed at the quick coordination between the two, but was still not going to just let them think they pulled one over on me, so I jumped up and sent a small stream of smoke downwards at them. They were able to stop before running into each other, but was now surrounded by the smoke, and pretty soon they would have to either escape the area or risk breathing it in if I didn't dissipate it before then. Before any of that could happen, Shorent's staff glowed bright green and a light flashed and covered the two as a slight wind was felt brushing past me as I stalked around the smoke using heat vision to keep my eye on them. After my smoke was blown away, I looked over at Sylvania expecting to see her looking away like she had nothing to do with it, but she was sitting with Kitsoma watching us. She had a look of surprise on her face and pointed at Shorent before getting up and rushing towards him. Shorent, did you just use wind magic? I thought you could only use nature, at best though you would use water or earth as those are the combined elements, but wind. Were you hiding it? She asked with a curious but excited tone as she looked him over to examine him in case he used some sort of hidden item that we had not seen before. No, Miss Sylvania, I was lucky enough to awaken this magic just now. It was in part thanks to Master who gave me a shard of his power. I felt I could grasp wind magic, but I knew I had to work at it, and so for the past day I have been silently meditating whenever I could find the time. I finally grasped a small portion of it and was able to unleash a slight gust of wind. I was shocked at this. Does this mean that I gave them a part of my powers? I sent a mental question at the system. User is correct. The use of the taming skill with intelligent creatures has the possibility of granting a part of the user's power. Does that mean that when I gain power they will receive it as well? No, only the power granted at time of taming. Damn it, and here I thought I just lucked out. Okay, so is there a determining factor on what power they gain? Yes, it all depends on what disposition the creature in question has. The minion classified as Kana has the disposition of warrior. She has gained the powers of your physical attacks and bodily enhancing buffs that do not require magic. Whereas the minion classified as Shorent has the disposition of druid, so he has gained any magical element you have that is tied in with the element, nature. Okay, that makes sense. So is there a way for me to find out what powers they gain from me? Say maybe a status window as their master or something like that. User has not gained the ability to see into other beings' power levels. How do I gain that ability? System is only here to help with known abilities, not give handouts. Oh, you sassy ass system, damn it, fine, I'll figure it out on my own, but when I do I expect a bit more active help from you when I do. System generating new user-specific task, learn the ability. Appraisal, reward. Minion status window, really system, that's the reward. I would be able to do that anyways after getting that ability. User has classified system as sassy, generated system AI using preferred setting. You know damn well you're just doing this to piss me off, Bedo, Vexus. Are you okay? You spaced out there for a bit. Sylvania came over and shook me with a worried look in her eyes. Oh man, my bad, yeah, I'm good, just was lost in thought. So anyways, Shorent, it appears that you gained some of my powers. Does that mean you can use lightning magic? I have resistance and can infuse my muscles with it to an extent as well. I wanted to see what else he had, that way I can better plan future fights. No master, it would appear that only the wind affinity you have was passed down. I do however have a greater feel for the mana around me, so maybe you have passed down your understanding of it too. He looks at me with a faint glimmer of hopefulness. Well, how about this? Why not try and focus on the mana around you and see if you can move it? Even if you can make it move at all will determine if you have my mana manipulation ability. I activate my mana manipulation, that way I could sense it around me and make sure he gained my skill. I watched as he focused, and every so often I would see a shimmer in the natural mana around us before it would move slightly towards him. After a few minutes it started to become like a transparent cocoon around him, until with a gasp he opened his eyes and breathed heavily. Shorin, are you okay? What happened? Kana asked quickly while helping to keep him steady on his feet. I was overwhelmed by the amount of magic around us. After focusing for a short time I was able to gain what I can only call insight into the layers of mana around us, and the sheer volume and weight coming from Master was intimidating, so my mind faltered. I am sorry Master, I will get better, I promise. He spoke as he bowed down to me begging for forgiveness. Shorin, man, how many times do I have to tell you don't call me Master? For one, it makes me feel weird to have a dude call me Master, and two, you're not a slave, you're my companion. Yes, you are technically my contracted monster through my power, but I feel a partnership with you and everybody here, we are equals. No one is above the other on this team. Now aside from that, it would seem that you have indeed gained my skill in manipulation mana. With this you have also gained the potential to do so much more. I want you to focus on emptying out your mana, and then using your new skill I want you to try and draw in the ambient mana, that way you will gain the mana absorption skill like I did. There are unlimited number of ways to manipulate mana, both to create spells as well as using it as a tool. I will leave it up to you, Shorin, to grow stronger as my first minion in the long line of minions to come. I need you to be the strongest in order to lead the others as my second in command. I don't know what took over me at that moment, but I was filled with a joy that he had gained my skills, and I was excited over his new potential that I made the split-second decision to name him as my second. It was a hasty decision, but I feel that he has a certain right as my first, and if given the right training and opportunities, one feel that he will grow into an amazing minion that I can rely on. Oh Master, I cannot express how happy I feel at such an honor. I promise it will be my life's mission to continue to grow stronger so that I will serve you to the best my life can do, and should I fail in my duty I will happily accept any punishment you feel is necessary. He almost breaks in half at how low he bends before he finally bends a knee. I didn't really want this to happen, but it seems that as my first he also gained the most loyalty towards me into an almost religious-like obsession. Thank you, Shorin, now go do what I suggested so that I can get back to training the others. I walk back towards the other side of the training area with the girls, as the rest of the team is now interested in the goblins and what other surprises they can show. Pheromone Sense, 0. 10, Pheromone Sense, LVL 0. 1, Smoke Stream, 4. 5, Mana Manipulation, 15. 16. Chapter 39. Unexpected Evolution. You are listening at novelfull.audio. I started the training with the girls again, but this time I decided to do a bit of magical training myself. I started off by focusing my mana in my mouth, and then I imagined on creating a flash of light from my mouth. After a few minutes there was a physical pressure forming inside of my mouth, and when I moved my tongue I could actually feel like a slight tingling sensation, almost like a burning. So I turned away from everybody that was staring at me and opened up and aimed at the wall. The next second we were all stunned as a small beam of light erupted from my mouth and almost seemed to phase into the wall before the stone walls started melting. User has comprehended more of the element of light by 5%, user has gained spell. Breath of light. Everyone was shocked at what just happened. Some were frozen with disbelief, while others like Shorent and the goblins were smiling with happiness that their master could use such power. WHOA, since when have you been able to make a light beam? Howie raced up to me and with an excited look almost started jumping up and down like a giddy schoolboy. I just learned it. I said nonchalantly, like it was as natural as breathing. But in my head was another story. Holy shit, I just made a freaking laser beam shoot out of my mouth, holy hell, that was awesome. I smiled and sat down next to Kitsoma and Sundar, who had decided to take a break from fortifying the place and watch. Not because I was trying to act cool, but because I was severely low on energy. I got an intense headache and it was getting hard to breathe as my mana was used up past its limit. Hey guys, just so we are clear, that spell just now pretty much wiped me out for a minute. It used up all of my magic power, so until I get filled back up I want you guys to train together, okay? Oh, and Sundar, this place looks amazing man, great job, but now I want you to take Kana, Shorant, and Kitsoma and do a short patrol around the tunnel entrances to make sure the ants aren't gathering up, thanks. And after that the light fades out as I take a very unexpected nap. The others freak out instantly as my body falls over. Shorant starts to cast a small healing spell to help me out, but it didn't work as my body was fine, but it was my pool of mana that was suffering instead. User has exhausted entire pool of mana, will now commence conscious shutdown until minimum mana has been absorbed. Automatic use of skill, mana absorption, has commenced. Automatic use of skill, mana absorption, will experience drastic reduction of efficiency. Mana will reach minimum requirement in 20 hours. Oh great, well, let's hope the other guys can handle things without me for a bit. These were my last thoughts as the darkness swallowed my conscious mind. Shorant, stop wasting your power, his body is fine, he just has to rest for a bit to replenish his mana reserves. Kitsoma leaned down and placed a hand on Shorant's shoulder as he was kneeled over my body with a desperate look in his eyes as he continued casting healing spells. But master needs me, how can I just stop? Please help me, Ms. Kitsoma, I know you can use magic way better than I can, isn't there something you can do? He looked up with a hopeless look in his eyes as the fact that he is useless in this situation dawns on him. There is, but I don't need to do anything. Look, his breathing is already better and the color is coming back to his scales. His mana is already being refilled, but it will just take some time, plus with that immense power just now I bet he didn't regulate how much he used up, so the spell just took all he had. Kitsoma said as she assured the loyal goblin that his master would be okay. Let's fulfill what your master said and go out on a patrol that should help ease your mind, plus you will have more use out there should we run into ants or other goblins than here worrying about Vexus and stewing in your own misery. Sundar stood up and said as he and Kana started heading towards the first of many tunnels they had planned on patrolling. Sniff, okay fine, it would be better to do as he says than have him find out I disobeyed him while he slept. The teary-eyed goblin rose up and with a short sprint caught up to the others as Tanoa, Vinoa, and Howie watched over my body and trained. User has gained sufficient mana to awaken. I woke up feeling sick, and still had a headache, but otherwise I felt better after a short nap. Only to get slammed into by two bodies slam into me while crying. Oh master, you're finally awake, we worried so much about you. We were so scared because it had been almost a full day since you went to sleep so suddenly. I looked down at the voice that just spoke only to see a cute girl with dark green hair and bright red eyes looking back up at me. Next to her was another girl who had dark green hair as well, but her eyes were willed with an icy clear blue. Master, we waited for you to wake up, but sometime during this our bodies changed and we became like this. Another voice spoke up which drew my attention away from the mysterious girls who just called me master. I looked up at the voice to discover a guy with black hair and bright green eyes that almost seemed to illuminate by themselves. As I looked at him, he bowed before speaking again. Master, I know that this might be confusing, but it is I, your most loyal servant, Shorant. Me and the other goblins experienced an evolution shortly after you passed out and have evolved into a more humanoid form. We are now hobgoblins and we have received classes as well. I have received the class of Druid, and can now fully utilize the element of nature. I also received a passive skill called Mother Nature's Blessing, that lets me communicate with various animals and some plants. Holy shit, this is too much. System, what happened while I was asleep? User experienced a burst of unnatural energy from an unknown source. That power then spread through to your contracted monsters and forced their evolution. Did it harm us in any way? System diagnosis reveals optimal conditions. No malfunctions detected. Okay, good. Can you trace the unknown energy to where it came from? Yes, but it will take a while and it will take up essential processing power. On second thought, let's not. I would rather have full functionality from you. Wise choice. Don't start, as I had the internal monologue with an otherwise helpful system. The others had gathered around me. Hey guys, I'm awake, but before we get started, yes, I feel better. I do still feel sick somewhat, but besides a headache and some queasiness, I am good to go. So since I see some changes happening, care to explain who everybody is now? I look at the goblins who went through a drastic physical change. Well, I already explained that we went through an evolution to hobgoblin, my lord. But I do understand that it might be a bit unsettling as our forms underwent such a drastic change. Kana, you're up. As he spoke, a tall and fit goblinoid with packed muscles and short blonde hair approached me before taking a knee before a deep feminine voice speaks. Master, I am Kana. I know before I looked like a small and weak goblin, but now I am filled with power, and using my new class of fighter, I will serve my master as his sword. The new and slightly intimidating Kana said as I felt a wave of power radiating from her new muscular body. It looked like a bodybuilder who focused on toning up their body rather than just getting bulging muscles. I could tell her power increased tremendously just from one look. Master, next is Leosa. She has been given the class of rogue. Shorin introduced a hobgoblin that kneeled down with black hair and deep green eyes. I am Leosa. I know this body is startling to see, but I promise I will become your shadow and protect you with my life. And next up is the SI. Before Shorin could continue, the two goblins on me jumped up and interrupted. Master, we are the sisters Tanoa and Vinoa. Tanoa is a ice mage, and I am fire mage. Aren't you proud of us? Ha, ha, ha. Vinoa, who was the one to speak now, had the attitude of someone who was happy-go-lucky and full of energy. Vinoa, please calm down. Master just woke back up. You need to relax. Tanoa said with a calm yet shy voice, almost like an older sister. But I was so excited to show off our powers to Master. Ha ha ha, little Vinoa, if I know Master, he will want to see it firsthand, but first we have to let him rest, otherwise you might hurt him if you go all out. Kana said, reminding me of how a barbarian would speak in some of the shows I used to watch. Humph, Vinoa huffed as she looked up at Kana. Just because you are bigger than me now doesn't mean you can boss me around, she said before she walked off like a child throwing a tantrum. I am sorry, Master. It would appear that along with the evolution we have also gained our own unique personalities. We are still getting used to them. I started laughing as I looked at the hobgoblins. I was astounded at how drastically they changed in just under a day, even then under a week of becoming my minions. I felt an odd feeling rising up from my chest as I watched them laugh at how childish Vinoa was, and I couldn't help but feel a happiness start to fill my heart. I almost felt like calling this team that was mashed together under stressful circumstances a family. It seemed as time had slowed and our time together as a team was way longer than it naturally was. Then that moment had passed quickly as a loud bang came from one of the tunnels that was closed off. I shook off the feeling as I mentally prepared for what was on the other side as I turned to Sundar. Can you sense what is on the other side? No, but whatever it is, it's big and heavy. I can already see cracks in the wall, but that should be impossible as I made sure to double the reinforcement of the main tunnels. He said with a slight look of fear. Don't worry, whatever it is we can handle it together. Kitsoma, Vinoa, Tanoa, and Sylvania, get behind us and start channeling your most penetrative spells. If it's a warrior ant like I hope it is, then we will need to stop it as soon as it rears its ugly head. They all nodded and jumped behind the vanguard that was made up of me, Kana to my left and Sundar to my right. Howie and Leosa were behind us and ready to attack at a moment's notice. Then as we were preparing, I heard a voice speak up with urgency. Boss, big trouble, we got a group of at least 30 red goblins incoming. Digger jumped out of the wall and yelled just as a loud roar and a huge bang came from the main tunnel wall behind us. Shit, so we have whatever is on the other side of that wall leading towards the ants, as well as red goblins coming in from behind us. Vexus, what should we do? We could always dig a tunnel out of here and let them fight each other. Howie spoke up with a tremble of uncertainty laced in his voice, making it crack slightly. I planned on having the ants and goblins fight, but I wasn't expecting it to be here. I was at a loss at what to do, but knowing that my friend's life were more important than trying to gain power, I decided to go with his plan. Okay, let's go with Howie's plan. Let's dig the hole, but while you are doing that I am going to lay down a few traps. I smiled mischievously and went to work on tying up a few pheromone bags that were designed to alert the ants and draw them in. I placed them just in front of where the goblins would be bursting through, that way they would crush and get covered in it, thereby hopefully enraging whatever was crashing through the opposite side. Done with the hole, Vexus, let's go. Sundar said after clearing away a good-sized hole quite quickly. It wasn't pretty, but at the moment it wasn't needed. We all piled through the hole and Sundar closed it up shortly after, just in time for a loud crash and crumbling of rocks to be heard as the wall was broken down. HHH, keek keek, I smell such a sweet scent. There are women around here. Oh, the sweetness in the air is so intoxicating. Come out, little ladies, we won't hurt you. Much ha 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 ha, a voice shouted out as a louder laughter rang out from however many goblins that followed it. We heard another goblin voice speak up as a loud bang came, what we assumed was the ant wall. Lord Sangresh, this should be the entrance to the ant colony, but it appears whoever was here has blocked off the tunnels leading to it. It looks as though a warrior has been drawn here. It is too dangerous to stay. The warriors are too powerful for us to kill. Lord, please, we have many women at home who are more than willing to satisfy you. I heard an audible squelch and a low groan before a thud hit the ground. Does anybody else want to give up on finding new females for their lord? Speak up now, you pathetic worms. It sounded like they may have killed the other guy, but I didn't care to stay and listen, because screw that, plus who would want to stay and hear about a dude who wanted to take away my companions? Sundar continued to dig silently with Digger as his scout. I had Digger find a large area with a good amount of earth around it, that way we could make a new base to train in. But I also had him pick a spot that was close to the ant colony for ease of farming. Plus, for now they were our food source. I also wanted to look at their food source, because if I remember correctly they would grow moss or mushrooms to eat off of back in the old world. Thinking of that, I devised a plan for another full party excursion into the colony in hopes of learning how they grow their food, or if they were living off of a diet of goblin. Sundar and Digger took a rest after finding a suitable place to start the new base, and I took this time to try my hand at some earth magic. I felt guilty not being able to help, so I decided to try and learn it. Even if I didn't master it right away, it still would help those two who were crucial to our escape. I placed my hands on a nearby wall and focused my mana into my hands. Then I pushed the mana into the earth and tried to mentally grab the earth. After a few minutes of pumping mana into the wall, I finally could feel like it solidified into the earth, and as I pulled my hands back, the earth moved with it. User has gained the skill Mana Hands. I was disappointed because I really wanted to learn earth magic. But at the same time I was a little happy just because I gained a new skill, and a very capable skill that held a lot of uses at that. Wow, Vexus, you learned earth magic that fast. Sundar was a bit happy, but also I heard a bit of jealousy in his voice. Haha, no my friend, I just used my mana manipulation skill and learned a new skill called Mana Hands by essentially grabbing the earth. I made sure to reassure him and the others that I wasn't a total monster when it came to skills. I knew I was still very weak in the grand scheme of things, even if I was powerful compared to my current enemies. Well, still, to think that you gained a new skill after only a few minutes, it's hard to believe how talented you are. Kitsoma said, with the others agreeing with her, and of course they all had a tone of jealousy which made me a bit embarrassed, but knowing what the goal was quickly pushed those feelings out. Hey, just trust me, the things I've seen make this level of power almost worthless. My dad took on a Shadow Eater and won, now that is the level that I plan on surpassing. So while getting compliments on this weak power I gain is nice, I can only place myself in that situation and realize that I would still come up short and more than likely die if that were me. They gasped at that. You're telling me your dad killed a shadow eater? That is insane. I heard some of the older ones can rival even the masters. Yeah, me too. I heard a rumor saying that one of the progenitors is actually living in the woods close to where the necromancer's territory is. Hey, listen, stop, those aren't important right now. What is important is our current problem. We need to get stronger and still find our way out of this dungeon. For now we need to secure a better food source and a defensible area. We need more patrols and scouting parties to start taking out straggling goblins and ants to make sure this area is secure. We have current problems that need current solutions, okay? After we get this settled I will let y'all in on a story or two. Heat vision, 0. 1. This is a fix from last chapter. 1 forgot to add it. Light magic comprehension, 15%. 20%, breath of light, LVL 00 out of 10. User can create a beam of light from their mouth. Mana manipulation, 16. 20, mana hands, LVL 00/10. User can use hands formed from mana to do various things. Level of dexterity is determined by skill LVL. Chapter 40. The Exploding Stone. You are listening at novelfull.audio. We rested for a couple of hours while I had Sundar use a little bit of his earth magic to create some basic shovel-style tools for the others to use. I kept using my new mana hands skill to level it up as fast as I could. I ended up leveling it by 3 levels, and with each hand full I was able to gather more and more dirt. By the time I leveled it up to 3 I was already able to excavate large chunks of earth around the size of about 6 feet or more. I went ahead and cleared the rest of the room and had the others rest in preparation for our trip to Antland. After I was finished I sat down by Kitsoma and Sylvania, who had developed a sisterly relationship I noticed recently. Vexus, just in time. Me and Kitsoma were discussing about what our plans were after escaping. She was thinking of starting an adventuring party, and while I wanted to return home, I feel like agreeing with her, especially after all the excitement I've seen lately. Well, that would be a good idea. I know that after this I will be heading back to my family to discuss my future plans with them, but doing some adventuring around sounds like a good in-between hobby. They looked at me weird for a second. Before Kitsoma spoke up. Hobby? What do you mean? Are you actually thinking of doing adventuring work for free? She asked with a slight twist of her head in confusion. Which totally looked like a cute fox and may or may not have melted my heart a little. What do you mean for free? Are you telling me that I can get a job just adventuring? Sylvania laughed. No shit, of course there are adventuring jobs. All you have to do is register with the Adventurers Guild. Of course they have ranks that determine which job goes to who, but that's easily fixed by completing a few jobs. Well, I'll be damned, that is awesome. I thought there was a place like that, but I never saw one or read about one, so I just figured I'd do it on my own and sell whatever I get to the next town I visited. We all had a good laugh after that for a few minutes until Sundar come over. Hey man, we're ready to start tunneling towards the ants. Digger went ahead to scout it out. He should be back in a couple minutes. Alright, awesome, so I am going to the old base, and if the coast is clear then I want to see if there are any of the loot that was left behind. I said as I got up and started walking to the tunnel that led to the old base area. Whoa, hold on now man, is that really a good idea? Sundar was quick to voice as he quickly stood in my way. Yeah, I think so. Look at it this way, what would happen if nobody is there and the loot we collected is? Well, obviously we could just bring it back with us here. Exactly, we can use that to create armor, weapons, and tools that will help us out way better than having to rely on you creating them from Earth. Which, by the way, don't get me wrong, is great, but if we design them specifically for that purpose, especially from good material, then it'll last way longer and have way more efficiency. He looked a bit hurt before mumbling a yeah, and slunk down onto the floor. I felt bad because I didn't think this would hurt his feeling that badly before. So I came up with a plan that if it worked out we would gain top quality materials and he would gain an awesome skill. Hey, I got an idea that I can only give you, wanna hear it? I sat down next to him and stared right into his eyes, hoping that he wasn't too sad or pissed off at me. For a few minutes he didn't say anything, so I just waited until he breathed in deep then sighed. "Yeah, go ahead, what is it?" he said in a defeated voice. "Man, this dude can be temperamental. So I was thinking, have you ever tried to condense your earth magic before? Like say you take a stone and compress down on it with your mana. What would happen then? It would become denser, right? And if it's the right kind of earth or stone, it would become a jewel, right? Well, what if you were able to create jewels, or even to create them out of thin air? That right there would give us top quality materials to make stuff with, as well as giving you another skill for your arsenal." The more I kept talking about it, the more I could see a faint light start to shine brighter and brighter in his eyes. At the end of me trying to convince him, he stood up and then grabbed a piece of nearby rock. "Yes, that sounds f***ing awesome. I want to make jewel weapons and armor and look awesome." "Thanks, man, although you're the one that made me feel like shit, you also gave me a goal." He took the stone in both hands and pressed down as hard as he could. I could feel the mana being forced into the stone before I got a shiver down my spine. I immediately got up and knocked the stone away from him. "Oh shit, Sundar, stop, that is too much mana, you almost made a bomb, dude." The others started to panic as they all start to stare at a smooth round stone that was the size of a palm but is now the size of a finger and glowing white hot. "Sundar, man, you put too much into it. I appreciate the attitude and ferocity, but you can't just throw it all in at once." I went over and picked up the rock before using mana manipulation and withdrawing the overwhelming amount that was starting to build up pressure. I was at my limit, but thankfully I was able to level up my mana storage ability. It was weird to have more MP storage than my actual MP, but seeing as how the only magical things I used per se were when I infused my muscles with lightning and also for my spatial bullets. Oh, and I guess now when I use all of my MP to use my new beam skill. Them, I was happy to have leveled up a skill, but that was overshadowed by the fact that even as I kept pulling out mana, the stone kept increasing in pressure and the mana inside seemed to keep growing. "User is in danger, recommend running or seeking nearby shelter." "You idiot, can't you see that we are in the middle of a cave? We are in the shelter already. Also, where the hell can we run to?" "User is recommended to run away. User may also ingest hazardous material inside abyssal stomach. But the resulting explosion will cause damage." "Shit, well, it's better than nothing, I guess. Everybody, this thing is gonna blow, so Sundar, I want earthen wall around me now and make it as tightly packed as you can, but do not overdo it." "Sylvania, Tanoa, I need you to create a thick ice wall around me. Oswell, I am going to eat this thing, but the explosion could still hurt you guys, so be ready." I yelled as I activated my 2 skills and opened my stomach to reveal a pitch-black mass that shoots out inky black tentacles to wrap around the small stone and suck it into the abyss. A few seconds go by as I am preparing for the pain. What the hell, thou? Boom, a loud explosion goes off in my stomach and a huge pressure actually forces open my abyssal stomach and a massive plume of blue flames erupt from it. The flames melted the rock wall and the ice wall together before finally stopping after a few seconds. User has experienced extensive bodily damage. Will now initiate consumption of stored material for regeneration. I wasn't able to read what the pop-up said as the blood was covering my body and also coated the walls around me as I screamed in pain to the point it reached a pitch and my voice went out. I still was unable to catch a breath long enough to start calming down. It wasn't until Sundar came over and knocked me out with a double-handed blow directly to my forehead. Companion POV. OFCK, 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 I killed him, I killed Vexus, oh shit, oh gods, I killed him, and after he gave me a new goal in life, damn it, why? Sundar was hysterical shortly after knocking Vexus out. Sundar, shut up, we need your help to stop his bleeding. Quit being a baby and get your ass over here. Kitsoma shouted as her hands were busy trying to staunch the bleeding hole that was my stomach. He isn't going to be any help, plus look, his body is already starting to regenerate. Do we even need to do anything at this point? I say best bet is to start patrolling, because this amount of blood is going to attract all kinds of beasts, even if it isn't goblins or ants. Howie said as he stood up still with a fearful look in his eyes. We can't just leave him like this, Howie. He went so far to protect us from Sandar's mistake. Even if he is healing, I bet he will be severely weakened once he wakes up. Why don't you take the Leosa and Kana with you and Sundar Oswell? He needs to get away from here for a minute to clear his head. Sylvania starting sending out orders to the others as she couldn't help physically because of her only arms being feathered wings. Fine, we will be back in an hour. Let's go, girls and dumbass. We are gonna go where Vexus was gonna go and see what we can scrounge up. I'm sure he had plans before the impromptu light show he was forced to put on. The small group left as Shorent, the sisters, and the two women who both were overly worried over a healing dragon nobody. Kitsoma and Sylvania looked at each other before nodding. Thank you, Sylvie. With them here it was getting difficult. I need you, Shorent, to start casting healing spells and focusing on using up as much mana as possible. He needs you now. Yes, Ms. Kitsoma, I promise I will. Shorent quickly says before waving his green gemmed staff over Vex's body, and after a few words forces a massive amount of mana through the gem to cast a green light over his master's body. Vex's body was slowly healing, but soon after his body drank in the healing light like a dying plant sucked in water. The massive open hole started to first regrow the bones including the spine. Then came the different connective muscles and tissue. Then, after what seemed like forever, came the skin and scales that sprouted out like small hardened hairs at first, then expanded like a pointed fan. Master just needs to rest now, unfortunately so do I. Shorent says weakly before fainting from mana exhaustion. The sister mages quickly rush over to Shorent to check on him, but Sylvania intervenes. We can worry about him after Vexus wakes up. He is priority. He and Shorent are the only two that can share their mana with others. It's a cruel ironic joke, but it's the only option available to us, so we need you two girls to try and quickly learn it, otherwise get out of the way. The sisters look at each other, then at the ground in defeat as they walk towards the back of the cave. An hour goes by and still Vexus has not woken up. His body had completely healed, but his body was skinny and pale, like he was malnourished. The others had come back with some of the leftovers that were left behind by the red goblins as they fled from the warrior ant. They had also ran into a few goblin scouts that were fighting a worker ant, so they killed them all and brought the corpses back under the pretense of everybody should be hungry by now. But as soon as they entered the cave with the bodies, Vexus jumps up and lunges at the corpses before rampaging and devouring the corpses while slinging various bits and chunks of flesh in his frenzy for food. Vexus POV. User has digested the flesh of a red goblin, will now auto-assimilate. User has digested the flesh of a cavernous worker ant, will store for later use, generating skill list, goblins vitality. The goblins are well known for having great vitality. As a species, they are known for rapid reproduction. User will gain the ability to create offspring at a fast pace that will be born in a few months' time. Red Goblin Rage. The red goblins are a variant of goblins known for how fast they succumb to their rage. User will be more prone to anger but will benefit from having increased attack and defense while in an angered state. Basic weapon proficiency. As a humanoid sentient species, goblins have discovered the use of tools, such as weaponry. User will gain the goblin's knowledge of weaponry. Warning: user has no way of utilizing skill, will be locked until capable. If chosen. My mind is a haze. Am I eating right now? I can't tell. I don't feel anything. I don't feel my jaws chewing, I don't feel my food sliding down my throat. What is happening right now and why can't I control it? User is now under the control of gluttony. User's body went through regenerative procedure to heal over half of your body. The cost was all of your stored materials from previous devourings. Body was in a state of coma until provided with a food source. Mana hands, LVL 0. 3. 0/40, mana storage, 30. 100 MP. 30, 100, basic weapon proficiency, LVL 0%. As a humanoid sentient species, goblins have discovered the use of tools, such as weaponry. User will gain the goblin's knowledge of weaponry.